there's no other way to put it, but Shoop's work revolutionized our understanding of mutant IDH cholangiocarcinoma.
Shoop had outstanding abilities, and we were fortunate that he chose to focus on cholangiocarcinoma.
And to this day, I still remember his warm smile and kind personality during my first interview with him.
Getting the opportunity to collaborate with him, especially early and before we had a true validation and understanding of the disease, was just a remarkable time in my career scientifically. Being able to see science that was coming through that felt real, and it felt like it had the opportunity to truly give patients hope and a chance.
I had the pleasure working with Shoop when he was a fellow and subsequently a junior faculty at Mass General Hospital. I think we're all indebted to Shoop for his several seminal contributions, including the creation of the first transgenic mouse model with the IDH-driven phenotype.
He became interested in the disease during his clinical oncology fellowship when he was treating a young man with cholangiocarcinoma with an IDH1 mutation. Shoop immediately began considering where he could have the greatest impact as a scientist. He concluded that there was a major need for more study of cholangiocarcinoma and for understanding the mystery of IDH. This was quite a bold and independent choice, because entering the cholangiocarcinoma field was certainly a road less traveled among his peers. In the lab, Shoop did a great deal of important work. He was also an inspiring mentor to those who worked under him and a compassionate doctor for his patients. He was excited to start his own laboratory in Seattle to discover and test new treatments for patients with cholangiocarcinoma.
And throughout almost 2 years working with Shoop, I admire and respected him even more because I learned so much from him. And Shoop was also my go-to person for professional development. He has given me so many valuable advice on my medical school application and throughout my journey as a medical student.
I remember texting him last year after Salt Lake and saying, "Shoop, everybody's asking about you, everybody misses you, and they all wish you a very rapid recovery." And he said, "Next year, Lippy, I hope to be there next year." I met him during residency at the Brigham. He was my intern and I was his resident. And I still remember he was on a plane all to his own from the very beginning. Other interns would show up to rounds 10 minutes late because they were still pre-rounding. They'd be all harried, they were trying to keep their papers together, but not Shoop. Shoop showed up 5 minutes early, cool, calm, and collected, and with that smile, that classic Shoop smile that just put everybody at ease.
Having worked with him for a number of years, when I hear his name, it's just two things immediately come to mind, and they're just very warm memories, and I hope that you feel it too. But his smile, if you knew him, could light up a room. It was one of those just charismatic smiles that could make the room just feel warm, but it fit him because he was so gracious, and his smile reflected that, as did his laugh. And if you knew him and you shared laughs with him, then you know what I mean. He had a very distinct laugh, and I loved it. It was just him. And I'll always remember those two things about him on a personal level. So,
when you think about Shoop, this is a brilliant man, but with humble demeanor as well. He was a prolific physician scientist, but he was always generous with his time and expertise to his colleagues.
Shoop's support and guidance has helped me get to where I am today. And even though he had passed, his professional and personal impact on my life will continue to shape and hone my personality and my future career as a physician. And I will remember and miss him forever.
On a more personal note, there was something that I learned about Shoop during fellowship that surprised me. He was always so calm and soft-spoken, and so I was surprised when I learned that Shoop can dance. He can really dance. We used to go to this club in Fellowship, a bunch of us as fellows, called Saint, and it was in Boston. And he used to love to dance to hip hop. And he could really groove and move, and he had so much rhythm and soul, as he did in every aspect of his life. But it was really fun to see that side of Shoop. And it was very much like Shoop, where he would just surprise you with these hidden talents that he had. On a final note, I will just share that I was reminded of Shoop recently when I read a story about Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was on tour in Japan in 1922, and he had recently heard that he won the Nobel Prize. And a bellboy came to his hotel to deliver a message, and Albert Einstein didn't have any money for a tip. So instead, he wrote him a note on his theory of happiness. And this note recently sold for more than $1.5 million. What did that note say? Albert Einstein wrote, "A calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success combined with constant restlessness." Shoop had this wisdom. Shoop lived this wisdom. He lived a calm and modest life as a calm and modest man. He loved his wife and his son. He loved his friends. He loved his work. He brought a zeal and a passion and a quiet confidence and energy to everything that he did. He had a grace and generosity, and he took a lot of joy in helping people. And I think this is why he had a deep happiness that he radiated wherever he went. Shoop has left a tremendous legacy in the field of cholangiocarcinoma with all of his dedicated efforts, and he's left deep footprints on all of our hearts. Shoop was unrepeatable. We will really miss you, Shoop.
You have heard some beautiful tributes about Dr. Supriya Saha, lovingly called Shoop by his friends and colleagues. Shoop was a gifted scientist and clinician. I remember the very first time that I heard him make a scientific presentation, I knew that we needed to get connected with him. He became one of the first recipients of a CCF Fellowship Award. He was a young and energetic scientist who focused much of his lab-based efforts on finding a cure for cholangiocarcinoma. He helped Agios develop a targeted treatment for patients with an IDH mutation and was soon after funded to set up a cholangiocarcinoma-focused lab at the Fred Hutchinson Center in Washington. Internally, we called this the Shoop Effect. It's exactly the pattern that we want to see over and over again. We want to identify and provide seed funding for the best ideas and the most talented scientists and clinicians, and we want them to go on to discovery, bigger publications and bigger funding opportunities, all of which help us get better treatments to patients. But Shoop was not just an intelligent and dedicated scientist. He was also a thoughtful and kind clinician. In my personal interactions with him, I found him to be one of the most light-filled, kind-hearted, and friendly people I have ever met. I never saw him without a smile. Shoop was an active participant in our very first conference, and as such was a vital part of this community. Shoop passed away earlier this year, and so many of you joined us in expressions of grief and loss for his family and his colleagues. But this was also an enormous loss for the cholangiocarcinoma community. We are hopeful that more Shoop-like young investigators and clinicians will find a passion for cholangiocarcinoma and will join us in our efforts. It is our desire to honor Shoop and all that he stood for. So today I am announcing that CCF will be funding a Remembering Shoop Research Fellowship Award. We are very pleased to announce that Agios has stepped up and put $10,000 into this fund. We all know that as stakeholders, we have to invest in intelligent, young, innovative scientists and clinicians if we are going to move the science forward and bring new treatments to patients just as Shoop did. The impact of Shoop's science and clinical work will never be forgotten. And we hope that this new fellowship in his honor will help us attract the brightest and best. So many of our friends and colleagues have asked us what they can do to honor him. and we would invite you to make a contribution to the Remembering Shoop Research Fellowship Fund at the link at the bottom of this screen. We're so grateful for the impact that Shoop made on us as individuals and as a community of stakeholders, and we hope that we can increase that impact by funding this research fellowship in his honor. Thank you, Shoop.